Hi everyone. I thought instead of sending an email or posting something on Google Classroom, I'd do a little video today to kind of explain what's going to be happening for today with our third FID day, and then also what could be coming up in the next week or weeks, depending on what is happening. So, for today, for this week on Friday, there's pretty much two main assignments that I would want you to finish up. The first one is our AP exam multiple choice project that we were working on last week. That's going to be due by the end of today on Friday. And again, how you're going to submit that is share it via Google Docs. You don't have to do a submission through Turnitin or Google Classroom. All I need you to do is just share it via Google Docs at the kanej@staff.nhsd.net email. I think when you're in Google Docs, and if you just type in share with Mr. Kane, I think that email address will come up. Just a couple little reminders. Make sure you do have your names on the document. One name if you're working on your own, or multiple names if you are in a group. And then also make sure that you designate your correct answers. And you can do that with the asterisks if you want to have them in bold or italicized, underlined, but something to designate what your correct answer would be. A couple other things to just kind of keep in mind. Remember, you want to have your questions in chronological order via the as it pertains to the line numbers within your passage, and double check your spacing to make sure all those things are correct. That you don't have a question at the end of one page and the answer is coming on the other page. If you have any questions, just make sure you check in with me before it gets too late. But if you check in with me by 9, 10 o'clock p.m., I can probably give you a response by then. But obviously the sooner the better when it comes to that project. So just make sure that gets shared with me again via Google Docs, and then you should be good to go. And I would hope by early next week. Can't guarantee over the weekend, but by early next week, you should be able to then see those scores showing up into Power School. The other assignment for today would be the poetry quiz for Hymn to Adversity. You receive copies of that poem, and there's also a digital copy of that poem on Google Classroom with our last Fid Day that you can take a look at. I certainly would recommend you printing that poem out, before taking the quiz so that you can do a TP cast or any kind of notes that you would want. The poem is included in the Google form. So, worst comes to worst, there is a copy of the poem on the Google form, but it certainly would be easier than scrolling back and forth on a page if you have your own copy of the poem. So feel free to use your notes. It's 14 questions. It'll get graded as any other, where there'll be 3 points getting added to your final score. So I'll return your quiz with the answers after everyone has submitted it, completed the quiz, and then however many you got correct on the Google form, there should be an additional 3 points that would be added on Power School. So you can certainly double check with me or email me, contact me if you notice that there's something wrong with the score in Power School, that it's not taken into account those 3 points. Last on Wednesday, introduced the Invisible Man motif essay. So you have a copy of the prompt on Google Docs. It is a take-home essay. So there is not a TWA that we're doing for Invisible Man, nor is there going to be a synthesis essay, take-home, or TWA. So we're just doing one essay for Invisible Man. So that'll get submitted via turnitin.com as we normally do. Since it is a take-home essay, our normal to-be verb rules would be in effect. So no to-be verbs in the intro, conclusion, or first to last sentence of the body paragraphs. For your body paragraphs, and the expectation would be there's at least 3. You would have 2 quotations and then an additional citation per paragraph. If you want to go with 3 quotations and not have any additional citations, that is okay. For your quotations, and I can add this in, you do not have to worry about a 6-word limit like we did with the Flannery O'Connor essays, or 8-word limit. You can use whatever quotations that you want. I certainly would recommend, though, that you blend in your quotations like you would do with a synthesis essay, and that's also very helpful and handy when it comes to a rhetorical analysis essay, which this is going to be with your motif. Keep in mind, you have some resources that you can certainly use. Your motif chart, if you've been keeping up with that while doing the reading, can certainly be useful. And then also your IM Invisible Man study guide is nice, because that certainly already ties into some of the motifs and has some page numbers. There could be some reference points with you. Had a couple questions coming in about is there a rough draft due date, and right now there is not. It is possible that maybe next week, depending upon what's going on with our situation, because we're kind of in uncharted territory here with the school. If we're going to be doing some remote learning beyond our initial 2 week period, I might not have a rough draft due, but there could be something like a brainstorm where you can at least check in with me as to what your motifs are, what's your thesis statement looking at, what are your examples, just so I can kind of sign off on that. And then we'll go from there so far as what a final copy due date would be. So right now, I would say the due date would be to be determined. If we are returning to school after our initial 2 weeks, that due date would be after we return to school, so that if you had some questions, we could handle that face-to-face in class after we return. If there's going to be an extension where we're going into April or beyond, then that due date would have to be while we're doing our remote learning. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on that and see how things go. But certainly questions that you have about the essay, by all means, you can always check in with me via Remind and email. Also, I did put a discussion thread posting on Google Classroom, and this would be for all the classes. So even though this is period 1, if you're in period 4 or period 7, the same thing would be there. And if you go into the FID materials, I have a discussion thread where it just says post questions or concerns that you could have about the course. Also, if you come across anything that could be useful, whether it be for the Invisible Man essay or some other resources, just because we're not seeing each other, you can post on here. So I'll try to check in there daily, and if you have any questions, I can also answer them via that way as well. So you can go through Google Classroom, send me an email, Remind text. All of those things are certainly options that we can take a look at. So due date, we'll just kind of wait and see, and I'll certainly give you at least a week notice before due date. So if you don't hear something about a due date, it's not that on a random Friday I'm going to go essay due by the end of the day. I'll give you certainly a week notice for sure, but this would be something that you would want to be working on, because I would anticipate, at the very least, you would want to look at it as being due the week that we would return to school after our 2 week period. But I'll certainly handle and give you some specifics as we get closer to that time. And then, other question that no one's asked kind of yet, but I think a lot of people could be thinking about is, what's next, with Invisible Man? And honest answer is I'm not 100% sure, because it just depends on what our school situation is going to be. But whether we're in person or we're doing some remote learning, really the next 2 main assignments are going to be Slaughterhouse 5, which I distributed copies to you before we left school Thursday. If you were not in school on that last Thursday, which I believe was March the 12th, you'll still be able to get a digital copy via Google Classroom. So if you don't have a physical copy of the book, you'll still be able to keep up with us. But we're going to be reading Slaughterhouse 5, which is our last novel of the year. And then we're going to really be working on college application essays. And obviously there's the AP exam as well. And that's something where right now the exam dates are still the same distribution. Right now there hasn't been anything definitive. I know College Board is certainly looking at some possibilities of being able to take the test remotely, through home, whatnot. We don't really have any specifics as to how that's going to work yet. So as I get more information about that, I'll certainly let you know. If anyone comes across, you get emails from College Board identifying specific changes to exam dates or how it's going to be handled, you can certainly share that with me, and I'll get that information out to everyone as well. But potential assignments that we might do with help for preparation with the AP exam is it could be some revision assistant essays. We did one rhetorical analysis prompt on with revision assistant. There is a synthesis essay, and there is a DRQ question that we could always take a look at as well. And we'll be doing some things with multiple choice if we're doing remote learning for a little bit lengthier period of time, and can do that through Google Forms, multiple choice, and then also the AP Classroom that you have logins for through the College Board is a place where I can post some multiple choice questions as well. So we'll be doing some things to try to get you caught up with that. The nice thing, to keep in mind with our AP exam, it's a skill-based test. So it's something that's going to test all the skills that we've been covering throughout the course of the year. It's not a content-based test the way that you might be dealing, with a physics or a calc or a U.S. history or whatnot, where there's certain material and terminology we have to get through. We've covered all that terminology, and you really know how the test is going to be set up. So it's just going to be using those skills and us continuing to practice and hone those skills in order for you to do well on your AP exam. If you have any questions about anything, AP exam, units, that we're working on, or whatever, feel free to shoot me an email. You can either do that at the Gmail address or the nhsd.net. I prefer the Gmail address. Just a little bit easier. Works better, I think, Gmail to Gmail, and you're not worried about a spam filter. But you can also certainly use Remind app and post some things on that discussion board thread if it comes to mind. So I hope everyone's doing well. Hopefully get to see you sometime soon, but we'll try to keep things as normal as possible as we can, and finish off the year strong. So take care, stay safe, and hope to see you soon.